Woo-wee. Hello, friends out there on the internet. Hey, friends. Bart here. Just jumped out of our little study group for this week, the CPT Nuggets AWS study group. The topic this week was on continuous integration and continuous deployment. But, true to form, we kind of just went sidetracked way off onto the side there, which was fine. It was great. And I had someone join up as a learner who's been in the CPT community for a while. He joined us tonight, and he had some questions about automation, about Python scripting, and kind of some real-world activities that are happening in AWS land. And so that's kind of what I titled our little live stream about tonight. It was, do I need to know Python to automate AWS? And, of course, the whole internet technology space is just awash in automation discussion right now. And people are talking about using Python to automate networks all over the place. You got Cisco DevNet just eviscerating the networking world, turning out all of the network engineers of the world into, automation engineers, which is great. I think it's a fantastic trend. And I hope that continues to move forward because automation is one of the key technologies. If you've watched any of the cloud training or heard me rap about stuff on the internet there, you've probably heard me talk about the 3 core cloud computing technologies, and that is networking is one of them. LAN, WAN technologies, TCP, IP. The other one is virtualization. And I don't mean just running VMs. I'm talking about service abstraction in the use of things like hypervisors, of course, but abstraction layers, key concept there. And then the other part is automation. So when we think about the automation part of it here, sure, Python is certainly a very versatile language that we can use to perform many things. And I also had another learner in my class tonight who was like, I'm in here using the command line, and I'm trying to imagine how I would go and build all these resources using the command line. And I kind of had to break it to him. Both of these guys had showed up kind of thinking, are we going to use Python to do this? We're going to use the command line to do this? Because I've seen that done elsewhere. And I kind of broke it to him. I was like, honestly, when I think about most of the AWS work that I've done over the years, I've written handfuls of Python for it. Yes, there are lots of examples in which Python and Lambda functions were the solution that I went with. But more often than not, it's the managed automation pieces within AWS that were really driving what I was getting into. And so when we think about what are those managed services, well, the first ones that pop up, of course, CloudFormation, writing templates to deploy things. Or using even higher level services like Elastic Beanstalk, which also writes CloudFormation templates for you and manages those resources in the background. And other products that are very, very popular in that space is, of course, AWS Systems Manager, which is a whole suite of automation opportunities that are out there. And then you've got solutions like OpsWorks, which is a managed Chef and Puppet engine for performing all of this config and deployment management activity in the background. So when I think about the question, do I need to know Python to automate AWS? I would say absolutely not. You don't. You really don't. And there's a ton of ways that you can get around a shortcoming in Python coding experience. Now, that being said, just like a chef in a kitchen, the more tools I have available, the more skills that I know, and the more opportunities that's going to open up for me, the more places I'm going to be able to go with those tools. So that being said, if you know how to write scripting languages, and this isn't just limited to Python, JavaScript is going to be a great fit. Many of the other ones that are available out there as well. Again, that's going to go that much farther because it's going to give you customization, augmentation, and integration opportunities with a whole bunch of additional tools that are available out there. Now, I'll be honest, guys, I'm not a Python developer, but I am not afraid to get in and rip open a piece of Python code and start working with it. And so one of the other questions that kind of came out of the lesson tonight was about, well, what are some of the key things that you learned to make it easy to write code, even if you don't know how to write code? And I'll tell you that there's really only 2 or 3 things really that I learned over the years that helped me be able to take almost any type of code and start trying to work with it. Okay. And there's really only a couple of real key patterns in the software development world. The first one is the notion of input-output. You need to understand the basic premise of consuming information that comes from somewhere outside of your code, and then how to generate output as well. And as you begin looking at the patterns, you're going to begin understanding things like serialization, file system interactions. You're going to consider the idea of being able to talk across connectors to other systems that are out there. And these are patterns, mind you. Okay, it's not the end-all solution. These are just kind of patternistic endpoints for it. Once you get into that, you're going to begin being able to open up a piece of visual code, a piece of Node, a piece of Ruby, a piece of Python, a piece of YAML, whatever it is that you're working in there, and begin recognizing patterns of input-output. Because all of the different languages that are out there and frameworks, they have those patterns. The second big one was the idea of repetitive code. Now, sometimes that's a method, sometimes that's a function, depends on the nomenclature specific to whatever you're working with. But looking for the concept of how to create reproducible pieces of code, that was another really big important pattern for me. I've been able to get through a ton of development projects over the years, integration efforts really, simply by knowing how to pick up a piece of code and figure out how to supplement input and output variables to some sort of basic template that I found using, often vendor supplied content, maybe things that are publicly repoed available as well. Okay. In the end, those two basic things helped me go really far throughout the software development world and be able to be functional in a number of ways to the point that I can at least go look stuff up, struggle my way through it, and begin developing something. Okay. And then the final piece there was I did learn how to debug. Okay, so the idea that you can set watch variables and how to monitor certain elements of the code you're running, and then how to do breakpoints, and basically how to kind of use the IDE itself. That final trick was one of the more important ones, which made me go from being able to just look at code to being able to really write it and break it and then fix it on my own. And that's really where I am now after, whatever it is. I think I'm officially saying 18 years in the industry this year. Wait, it's 2020. Yeah, we'll go with 18. This has gotten me through all of it. I've been worked in Windows environments. I've worked in Linux environments, and now I'm working in the cloud, worked in network automation. And all along the ways, those patterns of input, output, reproducible code, and knowing how to basically perform simple debug operations has gotten me through a ton of stuff over the years. And in the end, now that I'm in AWS land and doing even more serverless work, training in those environments, training on the support systems that drive those environments as well, I am comfortable going and picking up other pieces of code and trying to make them work. So I thought that was an interesting lesson to talk about tonight. And in the end, one of the cool sales pitches behind this is that you really don't have to know Python to automate AWS. You can work in a ton of these other managed services that perform extremely powerful automation tricks. So I showed my one learner tonight how to get into Systems Manager and how to check out Systems Manager documents, the run command options, the session manager pieces, the parameter stores that are available there as well. And immediately the light bulb started going off for him. And he's like, oh, that's right. I see. I didn't have to write code, but look at all of this functionality that's available to me. And I don't know, guys, frankly, if that isn't cloud computing, I don't know what it is. That is, as far as I'm concerned, it is super classic cloud models right there. Easy consumption of powerful technology at an on-demand pricing model. So those are all great fits coming together there. So just to kind of wrap things up tonight, didn't really get into continuous integration and continuous deployment. Perhaps we'll table that until next week. But it is kind of related to what I was talking about, the notion that we can automate these processes. You look at Code Pipeline, which is like a framework system for managing continuous integration, continuous deployment, and continuous testing operations within AWS. And there's a whole bunch of automation that tool does that I don't have to write any Python to do. So yet again, we kind of see that same pattern emerges there as well. So in the end, do you need to know Python? No. Will it help you in a number of ways? Yes. And once you get into trying to make Lambda do crazy things like backflips and jump through hoops and work with Cognito and all these other data sources that might be available out there as well. Yeah, the more code skills that you have, the more enriched your applications can become, and the more diverse the types of solutions are that you can create. But recognize that there are still some core patterns underneath of it. And one of the beautiful things about working with a provider like AWS is that you're not alone. You're a part of a community of individuals who are suffering. Oh, I say suffering, who are sojourning on through the world of things like serverless development and solutions architecting, which is not a concrete defined thing. Solutions architecting is a fuzzy practice. You're taking variable types of input and making variable types of alignments with solutions in the end. So automation is always going to be one of those key parts of it. in the end, I hope everybody had a great time kind of catching up on it. If you've never had a chance to join the CBT Nuggets learner community, consider signing up for a free trial. If you want to jump into one of our groups, you would be able to check that out. Beyond that, I hope you'll check out the rest of the training that I have available at CBT Nuggets. You can see it at learn.gg/Bart-Castle. A couple other things to kind of say before we head out. I'm right in the middle of a cool project with my good buddy Data Knox. So make sure you're following along on that. He is using his Cisco Meraki devices to send a bunch of interesting payload and event info to me in AWS, and I'm going to consume it. Ready, Knox? And he's going to send that stuff to me, write a little Lambda function to consume it, and then perform some actions with the data that he's sent. So kind of a cool hybrid project. It's going to encapsulate a couple of vendors at CBT Nuggets and a couple other products as well. So I hope you guys will check that out. Make sure to like and subscribe. And like I said before, my friends, take it easy, and we'll see you in the cloud.